I'm Demis Hellen and welcome to the brand new workshop series for Obsession. Obsession is our emulation of the Oberheim OBX-A synth that was released way back in 1980. Very popular amongst artists such as Van Halen, Prince, Queen, New Order, just to name a couple, and is still popular to this day amongst modern artists. So in the first episode of the Obsession Workshop series, we're going to create a sequenced patch utilising the step LFOs which are unique to Obsession. We can control various parameters, but like in today's video, we're going to control the semitones and make a musical sequence, and I think you're going to love this one. Now we know the sound of the patch, let's redesign it in Obsession from the initial patch. So to come standard, we use two saws here, and we're going to change that up. So what we're going to do is turn off Oscillator 2 for now. Oscillator 1 is going to be our melody, Oscillator 2 is going to be our bass. So we're going to turn off the saw so it defaults to that sort of soft square waveform. And pitch this up 1 octave. And that is the first layer done. That's all we need to do. And from that, I'm just going to boost the level so we can hear that a little bit clearer and just get it a little bit more balanced. And then for the second oscillator for our bass, we can turn on Oscillator 2, turn the first one off and set this to a pulse. Perfect sound, but we need that to be a lot lower to become a bass, and we only have the option to pitch this up on the front page. So we're going to jump to the back page by clicking Obsession at the top or the 2 arrows in the top right, and that'll bring us to this second page where we have our effects, mod matrix, global, and the LFO steps that we're going to use a bit later on. And what we're going to do on the mod matrix, I'm just going to reset this so we don't have anything on there. And we're going to set a constant value. So a constant value just means that it's going to keep a particular parameter in a constant position. So we're going to actually do this to Oscillator 2, which is our bass, and we're going to pitch it down permanently by 3 octaves. So that's minus 36 semitones. And then if we go back to the front page, we've got a nice separation between the melody and the bass. So down here on the active mute voices, I'm just going to make sure these are all off apart from the first one, so we get a nice linear sound design. And then all we need to do is assign the LFO steps to work with the oscillator semitones. So the first stage is on this page under modulation, and we need to set LFO 1 to steps and LFO 2 to steps. And then if we jump into the back here, we need to set up a mod matrix source to tell what these steps are going to do. So let's just reset these steps on both LFOs. And on LFO number 1, we're going to set this to 8 steps. So that's going to be like this. And what we need to do is set LFO 1. So we're going to keep it simple. LFO 1 is going to control Oscillator 1 and LFO 2 will control Oscillator 2. So it's very easy to follow. LFO 1, and this is going to control Oscillator 1 semitones. I'm going to put this up to 24. So that's 2 octaves. Now the melody doesn't reach above 2 octaves, but we have the option for 2 octaves because the LFO steps here have 24 steps. Holding shift will snap these steps into perfect positions for that notation. If you want to go microtonal, then you can just click and drag without holding shift. So holding shift, you can see we're getting steps. And then taking our hand off shift, you can see we've got a very, very precise tuning mechanism there. So we can go really microtonal with that. But we're sticking to steps. And let's start with here. So these are our root note now with this. And we have 1 full octave to the middle and then another whole octave to the top. So technically we have 3 octaves of the root note. So bring that back down. We can build our melody, but we're going to reference our melody over here. So let's jump out, look at our MIDI, and you can see I've got my melody on the top and I've got all of the bass on the bottom. The bass is half the speed of the melody, so we need to set that up in the modulation page. But you can see here with the steps, all we're going to do is say root note, and then the next note is going to be 1, 2, and 3 notes up. And then it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 notes up, or 4 steps up to get to that next note. So it's going to go 3, 4, 4, 2, and so on till we've completed that sequence, and it repeats. So it repeats from this point. We've just got different bass notes in that second half. And that goes the same for the bass as well. So jumping back in, all we need to do is set the timings here on the modulation before we draw the steps in. So LFO 1 is actually on a 1 bar dotted rhythm. So I'm going to bring this down to 1 bar. And you're going to see that we've got 1/1 T, which is triplets, 1/1, which is a straight rhythm, and 1/1 dotted, which is an asterisk. We're using the 1/1 dotted. And then the bass is half the speed. So we're going to go for a 2/1 dotted for the bass. I'm going to turn off the bass down here, so we just hear the melody, and we're going to compose that one first. So you can see it's just holding one note, and we're going to make our bass. So the first one was 1, 2, 3 notes up, 1, 2, and 3, and then it was 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then it went back down to here for that note. So let's see what we've got. Perfect. So now we need to go up 2 steps, because that was the next note, then down 3, 1, 2, and 3, then up 1, and then up 2 to meet that, and that is our sequence done. So that's sounding good, but it's sounding a little bit quiet. The bass is really going to overpower that, so I am going to add a constant to oscillator volume 1 and just push that up maybe 56. That's sounding really good. So now we can jump back into the second page, LFO number 2, and we're going to set this up in the mod matrix for the bass. So LFO 2 to oscillator 2 semitones plus 24. And back to the front, we're going to switch on oscillator 2 and turn 1 off so we can only hear the bass. So you're going to be thinking right now, that is sounding pretty low down. And we're going to do this on 16 steps as well, by the way. So let's just have that. So that's sounding a little bit too low to the point that we can hardly make out that pitch. And I'm doing it this way because we can set it 1 octave higher on this middle bar. And doing it there will give us the right octave we want for the bass. But you might be asking, the constant value that we have over here on the mod matrix is set to -36, 3 octaves down. Why don't you just move that up 1 octave so it is now -24, only 2 octaves? Well, we could do that, but sometimes it might require you to have a different position if you've got more or less notes, so you want to drop below the section here. So if you had your first note down here and then it dropped a couple of notes, you have no room to drop a couple of notes. So doing it in the middle gives you the option to go either direction of that original root note. So that is a D sharp, which is D sharp minor is the key of this piece. And the B, from what I remember, goes all the way up 8 notes, I think. So D is our root note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, then -3, and then 5. So as long as you follow along, you'll get exactly the same results. So on the bass, we're going to go up 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, put them across. Then we were down 3, 1, 2, and 3 to that G sharp. And then finally up 5 to that C sharp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that is our bass done. So now we can listen to that in context. So let's just double check LFO number 1. Okay, so I've made a little error here, so I'm just going to drop every single note just down 1 to get it into pitch. I've just made a little error there, so just drag every single one, just 1 down by holding shift. It was just 1 semitone too high all the way through. Perfect. So now what we need to do is make this have that sort of pulse effect, like the filter is opening and closing, and we can do that using the filter. But if we just turn this down, you can hear nothing's happened, it stays open. And that's because the filter envelope needs the sustain to be reduced in order for the filter to start applying that particular undesired shape. And then we can shape it how we want. But you're noticing that it's not actually applying it to the rest of the sequence like it did in the demo. And that's because on the LFO steps, we need to turn on filter envelope retrig. And then every time it picks up a step, it's going to re-trigger that filter to get a nice and desirable pluck effect. So what I'm going to do now is just shape this up. You can follow along and copy it, or you can just tweak it to how you want it to be. But this is what I'm going to do with this one. So I've got it to where I want it to be, and I need to automate the filter now using that mod wheel, and then we can just use the mod wheel on our keyboards. So back to the second page, and then we can choose mod wheel in the mod matrix, and then we can choose cutoff right at the top. And a little trick for you here is if you open the mod wheel and then set the amount, you'll be able to hear where that mod wheel will reach when it's fully open, rather than trying to work it out by moving it whilst you're changing it. And that's sounding really nice now. And believe it or not, we just have one more step, which is to add the effects in. So if we jump into effects by clicking effects here to enable it, then go to the back and we have reverb, delay and chorus. So just turn these two off for now. We're going to use all three, and I'm just going to tweak this up. So I'm just going to open up the mod wheel a bit. So just hearing that decay, it's about where I want it to be. And then we're going to use some delay, and we're going to use X cross, and I'm going to set this to 1/8 dotted so it matches the same pace as my melody. So what I'm doing there is just rolling out some of the lows so that bass isn't having any delay on it, so it doesn't get messy between, but the melody doesn't matter. And then chorus is just how it comes, really. And there we have it. We have the preset mushrooms recreated. Like I said before, you can download this in the description down below. So there we are. As I said at the beginning, the LFO steps are unique to Obsession, and you can create some really magical patches with this. This is just sort of scratching the surface and just dealing with semitones, but you can attach the step LFO to many other parameters. You can simulate velocity with just controlling the filter level and the volume level as well if you wanted to give it that little bit of extra depth. And with that said, thank you very much for watching. I've been Demis Hellen, and I will see you all in the next episode. Take care.